Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the final installments of Detective Comics' City of Crime. Undercover as working stiff Donnie Malloy, Bruce Wayne ingratiated himself with the people of Crown Point, but more importantly, Rafi, the insanely strong and commanding foreman of the Waterfront Reclamation Project, and a close ally to the menacing entity known as the Body. A homeless man known as Crazy Jeffrey was used to spread some kind of pathogen that caused an apartment building full of people to go kill Crazy out of fear, until Rafi throttled the man to death. He was revived on the way to Gotham Mercy Hospital, where Robin, ex-Commissioner Jim Gordon, and a couple of his buddies guard the ventriloquist from the Body's forces. From a dead socialite to a baby-selling ring, to a missing pregnant girl, to a closed community with a suspicious leader, the mystery of the Body concludes today one way or another. Issue 812's cover sees bats falling against a swirling backdrop. Someone's betting a lot on him making this time tunnel reboot a success. He's surrounded by the heads of various people he's encountered. Jeffrey, Hattie, that chicken-faced henchman, and, if you look closely, the Smiling Man. We begin in the campaign headquarters of Mayor Seamus McGreevy. Because this story's been so grim, why not throw politics into the mix? Thanks to certain friends, i.e. the Body, it seems to be a shoo-in with 3 weeks until the election. But the office is still busy, and mayoral aide Norman gets a visit from the campaign's biggest contributor, Mr. Friendly, a.k.a. the Smiling Man, whom he hoped to never see again. Of course, Norman Steiner would prefer to think of himself as a genius, but like most of Norman's illusions, it is easily shattered. Like the third-grade science class that made him realize his dream of taking an ice rocket to the sun would never have worked. In Crown Point, there are many people moving past Raleigh Park, but no one takes notice, as if they don't see it there. Except for Bruce. Looking at it makes him want to claw his eyes from their sockets. I've had the same reaction reading James Tynion IV. He recently remembered following the Smiling Man here, but turning away. Now, thinking himself prepared, he steps toward the park again, and gets a vision of his parents' murder, which he expected, and to be honest, so would the reader if this was published today. Or heck, maybe even back in '05 to be fair. He also thinks of Hattie, still feeling guilty about her death, and Cassie Wells, whom narration mentions he knows he'll never find. Turns out she's a reigning hide-and-go-seek champion. Not as prepared as he thought, he passes out in the middle of the street, which does not go unnoticed by nearby civilians, who assume he's drunk. Get his wallet! No! If they see his back credit card, his secret identity will be ruined! Back at Gotham Mercy Hospital, several masked minions from the Body start climbing walls. Spider-Man style, apparently. A house of healing. Soon to be a house of horrors. In hindsight, as festive as Halloween decorations are, maybe skeletons and plastic body parts with fake blood were not the best scenery for people awaiting important diagnoses or are nervous about upcoming surgeries.
Why would you think that's unnecessary?
Between a small explosive and Robin's swinging kick, 2 of them are knocked off, prevented from getting to the ventriloquist on the 6th floor. Narration last issue implied he was on the 4th, along with the Boy Wonder and Gordon, which could be a minor continuity flub, or, hey, maybe they just moved him for safety's sake. Slim, Gordon's second associate joining the fight, takes a third climber out with a shotgun before it can slice Robin up, but what the Dirt Goons lack in fortitude, they make up for in sheer numbers, and Jim suggests they move on. Bruce has been taken to Rafi's apartment, apparently having told Saran off-panel he was going to check the park out as a place for the kids to play baseball. Rafi thinks that was stupid of him, as he leaves for work while his wife looks after him. As the brute heads out, Miss Dipsy starts making insinuations that stop the ironworker in his tracks, about leaving Donnie alone with his pretty wife, and how one hears things. Did you hear about the lonely old lady whose desperation for attention in her boring life made her a national sensation that garnered overnight fame and fortune for her constant gossiping? No? Because it's not going to happen, so stop being the worst parts of Twitter in human form! Bruce has a fever dream of a big party where he apparently dropped china plates, to the cheers of the attendees, including Andrew McNeil and his wife, as their daughter Hattie lay dead on top of shattered dinnerware. They later make her a centerpiece on the dessert table, people coming to swap stories about her. Then we get the corpse opening her eyes and professing love for Bruce. He springs awake, possibly having talked in his sleep, since Ciarán mentions he dreamed about the girl on TV, meaning Cassie Wells, despite her not being in the dream. Bruce admits that he promised Cassie's mom he'd find her, and Ciarán says the girl is in hiding, and will even show her guest where, if he takes her with them. Unless she's so ruined by her husband's abuse that she's not pretty enough. Bruce says she's beautiful, and they start making out. Regardless of the circumstances, this just isn't right. She's a 4 at best. I mean, she's married. Married! Yeah, that's what I meant. This is when Rafi returns, kicking Donnie in the face in the betrayal, and killing Ciarán with a cleaver, another of Batman's failures in this whole ordeal, ever since he smiled at Hattie. And that's why Bats doesn't smile. If he does, people die! Suddenly joined by other assailants, Rafi says his former friend used her to find the girl, and he can think about what'll happen to Cassie on his way to hell, as the gang starts beating him with pipes and wooden sticks. If he weren't slowed down by his fever dreams, he could end this quickly enough, but he instead opts to run for it, leaping out the window and into a conveniently open dumpster. His only goal is to find Cassie before the enemy does, moving through the sea of misery that is Crown Point, and ignoring distractions like the people around him and the memories of Hattie. It's as if the city itself is stifling him, keeping the girl hidden, but he disregards that as whining, and though still having no clue where to start after 3 weeks, he goes back to Bat basics, punching someone until he talks. This guy just so happened to have delivered a pizza to a pregnant girl in the East End, but before relaying any further info, he's shot by a body sniper. Bruce later arrives at an apartment in a building he'd been to before, but finds Hattie McNeil's body instead, like Gotham has preserved her as an eternal, mocking reminder for him. As he again recalls his parents' deaths, Hattie's eyes move to look at him. The redundancy of the Wayne murder scene has somehow willed back to life a girl that's been dead for a month. About time it did something positive. This has all been a dream, as he wakes up to Ciarán, asking if the Hattie he mentioned in his restless sleep was close to him. He just mentions that she died and moves on to ask why Ciarán had previously gotten angry when Donnie brought up a woman's shelter a couple issues back. The woman ran away to one of them once, only for Rafi to find her after 3 days, and she can tell this isn't the answer he was hoping for. Wayne mentions Cassie Wells and his promise to find her, the girl whose mom Ciarán thinks is a phony crying all the time, but if she's in Crown Point, then the smiling man must be involved, so Donnie best give up his search, or end up dead. But she finds all this in evasion of her question about Hattie, and Bruce owns up to saying some hurtful things to her before she died. Ciarán finds this foolish, his sense of responsibility making him look for lost girls, and claims he's a liar, since people only do things for themselves. Despite this, she still likes Donnie, but he has to amscray, as Rafi has a cancer in his mind that will grow, leading him to kill their guest. He tells her to get her things since they're both leaving, and soon they're packed.
Are you a private detective or something?
Something like that.
I'm Batman.
I mean, it felt a bit sloppy for him to mention his promise to find the Wells girl, since I can't imagine Donnie has that much makeup on to distinguish him from the very famous Bruce Wayne. Kinda makes you wonder if, for all the media attention Marlene the mom has allegedly been given, if she happened to bring up at some point the Batman paying her a visit and making that same vow. Just like in the dream, Rafi has come back, thinking Dipsy's presumptions were true, as Ciarán starts claiming Donnie made her get her things, which kinda makes sense since she'd want to avoid any further abuse, but he intends to kill them both as he leaks some saliva.
Ah, good boy, little drooly.
Aw, and look at the wife beating Jackwagon getting all teary-eyed. Yeah, so sympathetic, this one. And to further demonstrate this is no dream, Bruce sends Rafi flying through the door. What do we have behind door number 1? A concussed abuser getting his comeuppance. Ciarán waits inside a diner as Bruce calls his butler to take the housewife to her cousin in a nearby town, and it's implied Pennyworth must have initially asked if she'd be staying at the mansion. No, we're not running a Holiday Inn. We have much nicer stuff to steal. Besides, why would I bring her to the manor? She's too old to be a teenage sidekick, even if she can apparently take a punch. "Sir, I hesitate to ask, but no, it wasn't me." Norman the aide is in his office, getting hammered on scotch, pornographic scotch by the number of those X's. Tisk, tisk. The body can't find Batman and are getting rather paranoid. So after things were going so well for him lately, including his wife being intimate with him again, they want Norm to make a phone call that'll ruin everything. Is it that thing about lying about someone's vehicle warranty? Or the one where you call people saying you're with their phone company or Medicare to scam them out of their money? Either way, screw you! At the hospital, Robin and his ragtag crew are moving ventriloquist. Frank Ivers hiding under the bed while they fight off the body's soldiers. They take several of them out before they start retreating for some reason. Maybe they will run off, or are just regrouping. But Gordon wants to get to the helicopter pad on the roof before they try something else. After this delightful image of people either dead, dying, or in agony on a different floor, we go to the current police commissioner, Michael Akins. Norman made that call, which led Mayor McGreevy to make a frantic call of his own to the commish. Something about Two-Face, maybe Riddler. While Akins is hesitant, he does agree and hangs up. He tells another cop, Nichols, that the mayor wants something that Akins would prefer as a last resort. The bat signal lit up. "I hate it when Batman just shows up without warning, then leaves in the middle of my sentences. Gordon may look older, but I swear he's actually like 33 and just looks prematurely aged from all the stress of interacting with that guy." When picking up Saran, Alfred of course dropped off the batsuit, and as the iconic light shines against the night sky, a fully suited Dark Knight enters the shadows of Raleigh Park. Issue 813's cover sees a dark, candle-lit room with a crazy-looking bald guy with a giant mouth next to a lectern, as a bunch of shadowy hands point at him as if to answer the question, who looks like Charles Xavier got his DNA spliced with a chimpanzee? Or maybe some are pointing to that vaguely bat-shaped silhouette behind him. Mayor McGreevy is nervous, wondering why he'd be a target for the Joker. No, wait, Two-Face. And wonders if he could get a photo op with pointy ears, but his right hand, Norman, is too busy getting drunk. He could admit the threat isn't real, all a trap to draw out the resident vigilante, but sees no point, since they're both doomed anyway. The Batcopter, summoned by remote control, is 40 seconds away from Gotham Mercy's roof, but narration points out it'll be 3 minutes and 40 seconds too late. Bruce never should have programmed the autopilot to factor in dramatic tension. Team Save Ventriloquist has entered the stairwell to get to the roof, with Ivers refusing to carry the villain and again suggesting they leave him, much to Robin's irritation. That argument is called when Tiny points his shotgun at Slim, threatening his life if he doesn't stay away from his mom. Robin throws a batarang, hitting the barrel just as the gun fires, but Slim still takes the blast to his left shoulder. Before he can fire back, saying he won't surrender and knowing what they do in those camps, a knockout capsule sends both men to Sleepyland. Gordon says Slim will be fine. And no kidding, because in the next panel, the wound is closed and his clothes are stitched up. Did the gas do that too? Man, Batman really is prepared.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
Still, their behavior was out of the blue, and Ivers demands to be untied, not wanting to be left behind to die. "You can't feel it? In the air?" Looks like Frank's condition has elevated to Phil Collins syndrome. Marlene Wells sobbing, recalling the promise to find her daughter, Hattie McNeil taunting what Cassie has that she doesn't and that he'll never find her, just a couple of the visions Batman sees in the park, which he ignores as best he can, but knows he'll be living with the subsequent nightmares for the rest of his life. Does that count when he dies in some big comics event series, then comes back to life in a year or so? He sees the construction site for Crown Tower, a promotional billboard touting it as the tallest building in the world. At 166 stories, it would qualify in 2005, and even today, beating out the Burj Khalifa by 3 stories. But I digress. He then recalls something Rafi told him, how they would transform the city.
Of course, it's so simple. They're going to turn Gotham into a Decepticon.
While Ivers is getting so hysterical and clingy that Gordon socks him, and the Scarface puppet starts ambulating over to a terrified Boy Wonder, Bats checks out beneath the tower, finding a working locomotive, and can tell by the wind coming in from the tunnel that it connects to the waterfront project in the harbor, creating a private entrance to and exit from the city. Further underground, to pieces of old Gotham, he finds grounds for training an army and an old damaged church, ideal to house zealots for a secret empire. and to avoid process servers giving them copyright infringement subpoenas from Marvel.
The city's first structure was a church that became a madhouse. This is not that humble house of wood, but some cursed relation.
One that doesn't get invited to Thanksgiving because it keeps trying to gaslight every conversation into how its political views are always correct, despite and even because of evidence to the contrary. Inside, he finds hot coals heating a branding iron / mask. It looks concave, so appears to be applied to the face. Yikes. Then arrives at a sacred pool filled with bubbling mud, where these men of dirt are created. He can already tell that the sample he takes now will match what he took from Chicken Face many issues ago.
All carefully orchestrated, designed by some insane Wizard of Oz. But where is the wizard? Note to self, keep eye out for any curtains.
Gordon now sees Sergeant Ivers as the Joker, and intends to shoot him for crippling Barbara, but Robin bumps into him while running from a puppet he thinks came to life. Jim's delusional sights change accordingly, now seeing the team crime fighter as the clown and giving chase, leaving a confused Frank alone on the steps. Weird for someone that can sense what's going on and is more lucid than when he woke up, he doesn't seem to realize that they're affected like the other people. Back to the Bat, who's found a bedroom with a telephone, several books, the Bible, Machiavelli, self-help tomes like Chicken Soup for the Soul, and that rag written by the loser who stole Charlie Chaplin's mustache. The walls are adorned with articles, pictures of people, some X'd out like the Penguin, and a workshopped chant about the body, how it has no eyes, seeing only their own path, no ears to hear pleas of mercy, no nose so they can't smell fear. You also can't smell flowers or fresh-baked cookies. Really shot yourselves in the foot there, didn't you? He hears someone back down in the church, talking about the crisis at hand, whether or not they've successfully taken the city, if the experiments can continue. They haven't reopened their shelters, and with waters depleting, they cannot have new risings. But they first must have Batman's blood to end their torment. The speaker for the body, looking even more garish than on the cover, addresses an audience of the same faceless humanoid figures, makes an irrevocable declaration of war, and presents loyal servant Rafi Muskahanian, upon whom they will bestow great strength to crush the Caped Crusader. As the chant begins, of having no mouth and speaking no secrets, of having no head and thinking no thoughts but of their purpose, several dirt people submerge into the mud, with Rafi about to follow them, totally starkers. Guess he didn't need those crutches that badly. Bats is tempted to let him go through with it, trade his blood for earth and all, but batarangs him in the noggin and knocks him out instead, since he doesn't want to deprive him of his future trial and a needle. Batman doesn't like killing, but is apparently not that hung up about the death penalty. Go figure. He's taking back his city, and the speaker starts rambling how the vigilante is a blight, should unalive himself, and will never learn the body's secrets. Bats shoots back that he's learned them already, and tosses over the smiling man mask from the bedroom that he must have turned back to snag. After the speaker molds his face, his demeanor changes accordingly, essentially becoming Mr. Friendly, being in a good enough mood to honestly answer 3 questions, be it about the baby ring or the location of Cassie Wells. You know, for a cult that has no mouth, this guy really cannot shut up.
He starts monologuing.
Batman hasn't any questions, already knowing where Cassie is. And Friendly just laughs, saying he's not the head of the body, as it has no head. It is everywhere. Then proceeds to remove his own noggin, essentially self-terminating.
It's a shame he wasn't more headstrong. He'll never be the head of a major corporation.
Okay, that'll do.
Okay.
At the hospital, Frank Ivers is alone, as he expected, walking through the bodies of people having succumbed to the madness as he carries a shotgun, and looks out the window at the city. Narration mentions how surgeons spent hours saving a homeless nobody, only for them to die of the nightmare being spread by each beat of his heart, and that a wave of fear washes over the city streets.
This is Gotham City come to life. Behold, the darkening of all pants!
As Batman hops into his car, knowing where to find the body and end its threat, the Commissioner awaits him at the Bat Signal, at a different location than we usually see, with countless body assassins hiding in the shadows, armed and ready for his arrival. This brings us to the final chapter, 814, its cover featuring the Star fighting off masked henchmen, with more on the way, It's a fine cover, but doesn't really say big finale as one might think they'd go for. That doesn't make it bad per se, more subdued. Gotham, characterized as a madwoman by narration, is at the mercy of this viral spread, where people within a 10-block radius and counting of the hospital see their own personal horrors. They're at the Gotham mercy, you might say. You know, because the hospital is called, forget it. A panicked, unemployed husband presents an impending threat to his sleeping, pregnant wife. A gang of wannabe tough guys are about to assault a woman. A single lady is so distraught over how much prettier she thinks her friends are that she's about to down some drain cleaner. Outside Gotham, someone is about to do the same thing, but because a performatively angry podcaster said it was a cure for COVID. A repairman wields a power drill against a family he sees as aliens. Alternatively, maybe he took some cosmosis he got from Dr. Franklin Selly. And an oversexed real estate agent runs from a horde of salivating pecarantulas, whatever they are. I actually tried looking this up and found nothing, which suggests that whatever is causing the hallucinations can manifest visions of things born entirely from one's unique imagination, and lead them to run into an oncoming truck. Narration points out this is actually pretty typical for Gotham. It's just being helped along by what was done to Jeffrey. Cheery, isn't it, folks? Really brings us full circle to the horrors of the first chapter. After 2 hours of waiting for bats to answer the signal, a flare with an adorably small parachute reveals the body's army. The city is clever. She cries for help but conceals a knife behind her back. She giggles like a child and reveals herself. Frankly, it feels a bit much for a 15-second TikTok video. Batman stands on a rooftop, as narration refers to the masked enemies as creatures vomited from the city's bowels of maggot-infested compost. He could take them out before they knew he was there, but his city has gone astray. She must be put in her place. Yep, no way anyone could read that the wrong way when you anthropomorphize a city as a woman. Not to give too much flack, but I can definitely see how this may not be taken very well. I doubt any malice was intended, just the writer's colorful metaphor maybe went off the handle a bit. A show is required. A big show.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light.
My mistake. For the tone of this story, this would be a more consistent clip to use.
It's time to light the lights.
As he drops in towards what looks like the worst acupuncture therapy ever, the mayor is an hour late for a big party to honor his vision of the waterfront project, which has made the rich attendees even more money. He's hiding in the bedroom, believing one of Gotham's great supervillains is plotting to kill him. Condiment King does not mess around! McGreevy's too scared of being poisoned by the Joker, dying with a stupid smile on his face and wetting himself, but Norman, instead of revealing the threat is fake, angrily tells him to go to the gala or he'll toss him off the balcony, since Norm's in no mood to provoke his wife of dirt to kill him over tardiness. He's probably also worried that he doesn't feel quite ready to be the biological father of a Cabbage Patch Kid. Gordon and Robin still hallucinate each other as Scarface and Joker, respectively, with Jim losing his gun and unknowingly throttling Tim, who readies a batarang to decapitate the puppet, but hesitates because he doesn't want to kill anything. Kind of a weird way to put it since he's talking about a dummy, but he has seen it walk around on its own, so it makes sense in a way. With some Batmobile assistance, Bats fights the body, narration mentioning how the city once fooled him, caught him unawares, then killed his parents. In case you didn't hear, Batman's parents died, but once was enough, so he leads and they follow, shown rather conspicuously as he starts swinging away from the fracas with the minions going after him. He spent his life taming her as one who hates another can, through punching. Now we know how Bruce lost his job as a lion tamer. The fight continues on the roof of a church, as he gets his foes to increasingly focus on him, then leads them away again. In the surgical room, Ivor stares at Jeffrey, narration mentioning that the cop's 22 years of cleaning up the streets, if with some unorthodox methods, and how he felt deserving of a little extra from turning dirty. Now he's divorced, his son is dead, as well as his partner. He's alone, and scared enough he can be this close to Jeff without hurting himself. In his tenure, the sergeant's instincts have never been wrong, and they're telling him that the homeless figure before him is the source of the chaos. So he listens to his gut, aims Tiny's shotgun, and fires. Just under an hour of fear-based hysteria ended over 100 lives, like this woman left in the garbage, scarred hundreds of others, but at Jeffrey's passing, thousands instantly awoke from their nightmare and started feeling better, including Gordon and Robin. Not Frank, though. He saw the writing on the wall, turns the gun on himself, and one more shot rings out.
I don't like this grimdark reboot of Scrubs one bit.
Batman has led the masked horde to the Waterfront Project, narration making note that he could do this all day, well, night, so legally distinct from MCU Captain America, and with a big smile on the inside, confident he could end this through his own physical skill. Truly, fighting people made of dirt is the real cure for depression, but as tempting as it may be to see how many it might take to wear him down, he's playing it smart as the Batplane flies by for him to grapnel. In the 2 hours before responding to the signal, he set charges, made sure the area was abandoned, and moved anyone lingering about, so he could explode the entire site along with the army. The detonation can be seen from the gala, where all the guests start to worry about their money and seek out the mayor for what to do now. Norman, meanwhile, is certain his wife's about to kill him, though the real Kate has been dead for months, and he never once shed a tear for her. So letting her die, get replaced by a subservient soiled duplicate, and being part of a laundry list of terrible crimes from murder to human trafficking was better than marriage counseling? The waters flood the underground, through the secret tunnel, then the old church beneath the prospective crown tower, and the mud pit where the dirt people came from, like Steiner's faux bride, whom he attacked and destroyed in front of the other guests, which included various journalists, with little chance of the story being, buried. Norman Steiner babbles something about dirt monsters and conspiracies and sex. And this time he wasn't talking about that series he's been trying to pitch to HBO. Bats briefs Commissioner Akins on this caper, which is all difficult to believe, but Pointy Ears tells him to see for himself, starting with his own 33rd Precinct, warning there may be more of them. When he doesn't clarify if that explosion was him or the people he was fighting, Akins orders the signal turned off, but Batman tells him to leave it on. So he does, for a week. I'm sure he'll secretly pay back their electric bill. He's good for it. In that time, Robin and Gordon are more or less okay. The body hasn't been seen, and McGreevy's poll numbers are dropping like a stone. You see, kids, the revelation of a grossly narcissistic politician's connection to various horrible crimes causing him to lose support is how you know this is a work of fiction. Now unencumbered by his guilt over Hattie McNeil, the Dark Knight visits the Wells apartment again, where he questions Marlene, because it turns out Sergeant Ivers' hunch about her was accurate. The self-professed good mother caught Cassie packing a bag, having gotten pregnant from her boyfriend Marcus and planning to run away, not thinking her mom would understand. She says she knew he wouldn't want any part of it, either referring to Marcus or her own husband, and Cassie's life would be ruined too, like when Marlene got pregnant with her. When that happened, she'd saved some money to attend Gotham City College, adding to it over the years, and her daughter claimed a good mother would give that money for Cassie and the baby, all while Pappy watched TV like he is now.
And to make things worse, he was watching Family Guy.
It's a little unclear whether the girl somehow got that money or was a guilt trip, a smack in the face to her mom's parenting to get her to fork it over somehow, but whatever the case may be, it added to the stress of the mother working 2 jobs for very little money, her husband contributing little or nothing at all, so Marlene began uncontrollably beating Cassie with a small cooking pot. She only stopped when she heard her 8-year-old son calling, so went to check on him, making sure he didn't see anything, then put her daughter's body in the furnace.
Nothing more touching than a mother's love.
News of the fire that claimed several pregnant teenagers gave her a means of making it go away, always thinking of Robbie. Batman tells her Robbie will be all right, but narration says that's a lie, which is all he can do. Hattie, Cassie, little Bruce, none of them were all right, and the young Wells boy probably won't be either. But bats can't change what's been done. The story ends on a splash-page view of the city of 6 million and counting, as more flock to her, not seeing her like this until they've been beaten, stabbed, other stuff, their dreams destroyed and spirits broken, trapped by their own minds among the cankered rot that feeds this city of fear, this city of crime, this madwoman smiling a toothless smile. Gotham has dentures, but doesn't put them in very often. That was City of Crime, which I remember not liking very much after first finishing it years back, which is why I picked it to review. It felt like it'd been a while since I showcased a story that really irked me, because even though I only read through it once before, I'd long thought of it as one of the worst stories I'd ever read. Pretty sure I sold my issues with a bunch of comics years ago. Reading it again now, I can say I was wrong. It's a lot better than I remember. And no, not because I've read worse stories since then. One of its strengths lies in the narration, which does much of the storytelling, but in a way I haven't seen from most other writers. It can be as whimsical as a character with their own personality, with some creative imagery, some better than others, and knows what to tell us, when, and how much. The first part ends with references to the 6 dead teenagers, a mother coming forward, which all allude to the larger story ahead, but could have easily been general trivia with little impact beyond relaying tone and atmosphere. We're informed on the players, people more or less caught in the middle, that they're regular folks trying to get by, or how Batman feels back in top form when fighting a seemingly endless barrage of soil fodder. The pacing is nice and steady early on, showing Bats genuinely regretting some mistaken words to someone who died way too young, her whole life ahead of her, making it oh so delightful when he instills the fear of God in that dealer with that line about giving passes to crooks. A pass so they can get their teeth kicked in by one of his sidekicks instead, maybe. There's a lot of cleverness I didn't notice first reading it way back when. Batman stuttering a little, to show how perceived failures have affected him, or seeing him in panels while his dialogue has no tail, perhaps to denote how, regardless of if he's seen or not, his voice may sound like it's coming from anywhere, adding to his mystique. How he ingratiates himself with the ironworkers by doing something any of them might do, scrounge for food even if it's someone else's, because they're down on their luck. Introducing us to Marlene, lamenting that her daughter is gone forever, and foreshadowing Rafi and his temper, all among the other Gotham tragedies and minutiae, were nicely subtle setups. It was a good twist that this one woman's lie helped to motivate Batman to investigate and take down a cult that had nothing to do with Cassie's death. I could see how some might find it a kind of cheat or weak misdirect, but I would strongly disagree and call that a short-sighted assessment. On that note, there are some details that aren't entirely spelled out, though some could be accurately assumed, like Marlene's devastation when the cops arrived to tell her they found Cassie's body. She knows it's not her, for obvious reasons, and was maybe struck by guilt and fear of being arrested. Then there's this really great scene where Saran has had a bit too much to drink when Rafi comes home, and like she thought, Donnie went and rescued her by sitting down with her glass, giving the impression he'd been hitting the wine instead.
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Perhaps some stuff was left out for different reasons or no reason at all. Like at the beginning, we don't see the girl that creep took to the roof, maybe to avoid sexualizing a 16-year-old that somehow got mistaken for 13. I thought that girl Mr. Freeze mistook for Nora may have been a dirt minion of the body, there to dispose of the scientist. She didn't talk for a while until speaking rather formally for a teenager, coaxing the priest to burn his clothes and subsequently sacrificing himself. And it was strangely ingenious of her to incapacitate Victor with a hug, then let the crocodile tears flow when Batman arrives. But there was no indication that was the case, so maybe she just happened to be a genuinely clever girl who played along as Nora to exploit an Achilles' body temperature. It's obvious when you think about it. The best way to take out Mr. Freeze is to gaslight him. Similarly, I thought maybe those cops Doppelganger Lynch had gotten chummy with were fellow mudgoons, but nothing to substantiate there either. As for Norman's replacement wife, whether or not that dead-in-a-ditch remark was meant literally, Dirk Kate was shown once making out with Norman, which I kind of forgot since the rest of the time she's shown in shadow or otherwise obscured, and we mostly go by narration saying how she's gorgeous, a good cook, and good in bed, which is really yikes the more you think about how long this guy knew she wasn't his actual wife.
That's not how gardening works, Norman! What is wrong with you?
I really have no complaints about the art. Buildings and structures are incredibly detailed in the line work, excellently making you believe they could be brand new or decades old, which kind of applies to some characters too. Colors are bold when they need to be, as are shadows and darkness, used very well. I couldn't spot anything I would call a mistake, or even a common trope of unrealistic proportions. That being said, there's one criticism from my first reading that definitely holds up. This story is long. At times, it reads longer than it really is. Back then, it probably felt like that, and more disjointed, because I was getting a lot more comics back then, so there were other stories I was paying attention to. Delaying it for a different story for a couple issues that takes place after these events probably didn't help. Now, reading each installment one after the other, the story definitely feels more cohesive and lets you absorb its elements much easier, but it's still such a slow burn. Its pacing kind of works for it and against it. I could see this feeling like a slog for readers at the time, and might make them want to drop the title until a new story or writer came on board. But to be fair, it's that time taken with these characters, be it Marlene, or Bruce's guilt over Hattie, or the people of Crown Point, that helps connect them to the reader and make them feel like actual complex people and want to see them helped. Or get what's coming to them, as in the case of not-so-gentle giant Rafi, the abusive husband and murderer. Sent through a door! Sweet sassy molassie, that was satisfying like a hearty meal. A simile that I assure you was entirely coincidental to the following scene taking place outside a diner. I included the backup from issue 800, figuring some of the victims there were taken out by the body, that the crimes referenced as works of art alluded to their overall masterpiece plan, but couldn't find any such connective threads. Maybe they were so subtle that I missed them, or perhaps this was more to exemplify Lapham's style, or at the very least how scummy he'd write Gotham, which I found to be a bit much. All the depravity, so many crimes and unsavory acts in progress at the beginning, then the fear wave towards the end, with neither instance showing a lot of happy endings. Yeah, I know, a lot of this sadly happens in real life, but I couldn't help but feel over the top in just the first 2 issues. Perhaps just as with In the Dark, despite narration citing no hope, mercy, or light, Batman rescuing the kid, helping Saran, stopping crimes on the go, are all meant as silver linings among the seediness. Additionally, things being so bad, especially in Crown Point, it makes all the more sense people would appreciate Rafi for keeping undesirables out and taking control. With no one else bothering to help them, so what if he smacks his wife around and considers them all animals? As long as people like Dipsy aren't personally affected, let him do whatever, right? And same goes for how Rafi was taken in by the body and their cult-like control, offering an alternative future and an outlet for their frustrations for their lot in life, even if they were all just being used. Like some real-life people in power tend to do. Come to think of it, with so many sidekicks and allies, Bruce could have them patrol that area on rotation, give it a bit more focus, and make things better. That could have been part of the Gotham Knights initiative from Detective Comics Rebirth. Oh wait, Barbara would have pointed out how one knight would have interfered with someone's poetry class at the Learning Annex, a mild criticism rendering the entire idea pointless because reasons! Yes, that joke was about how stupid that run was, what of it? Now, some of the more glaring problems with the story, like what precisely was the body's endgame? What did this Soil Collective want? To control the city from the shadows? If so, why? To replace every human and have Gotham for itself? Either could explain the varied reading selection it drew from, but there never seemed to be a stated objective other than to control the waterfront to get more H2O to create more of itself. The baby ring angle doesn't seem explained at all. Penguin operates the safe houses, Freeze eliminates loose ends, Ventriloquist was a go-between, I suppose, and they all knew enough about the secret organization to put their lives in danger. The fire that claimed several lives involved was what drew Bats to investigate, but no serious connection is ever made. Putting aside why rich folk were going through a criminal operation for adoptions, what purpose did this fulfill for the body overall? Maybe the adopted kids were getting taken in by rich people involved with reclamation, but even if that was for leverage, it seems like they had other, more effective means for that, not involving exploiting pregnant teenagers. Heck, the ring is almost completely forgotten after the halfway point, save for a line from Mr. Friendly. My best theory is that the body supplied pregnant girls from Crown Point and other poor neighborhoods, making both underworld and high society contacts, which does work with my remark about the kids being adopted by the wealthy, but there could be something I'm missing that totally destroys my argument. Clearly, the body used various books to learn how to communicate, influence people, and seize control, but I hope Lapham didn't expect us to read them all in order to get what he didn't explain here. There are stories that can get away with some ambiguity, especially if the intent is to make you think, but that can only work so far even in the best of cases. Maybe I'm just crazy for hoping for clearer resolution after all the debauchery, chaos, and death. I can overlook the scant punctuation errors, and even Tim Drake seeming a bit out of character from what I remember, being more callous or immature, but this lack of clear motives just really bugs me, and feels like it weakens the arc overall. Which is kind of a shame, because even if the narration could sometimes be self-indulgent with misdirection, it's still witty, inventive, and doesn't try to speak over its audience heads. The body seems conceptually like Gotham itself is attacking, its very Earth out to destroy Batman and control the people, even seeming to take on traits of some of his rogues. A smiling manipulator like the Joker, shapeshifter like Clayface, inducing fear-based hallucinations a la Scarecrow. Yeah, that whole thing wasn't quite explained either, and maybe it being from the Earth itself is akin to poison ivy. Okay, that's a bit more of a stretch since it's strictly dirt and not plants, but the similarities feel close enough to be potentially intentional. And if so, that's kind of brilliant. And it'd connect to how narration anthropomorphizes Gotham as someone who's sick, cunning, mysterious, and dangerous. One of my habits, for better or worse, is to include every page in most of my reviews, but for this one I tried to go bare minimum, like I did with King's Batman or Tynian's Tech Run. But that was not easy, since so much seemed necessary to clarify what's going on. In the end, I removed on average maybe 1 page per issue, and not even every issue. City of Crime is in many ways better than when I first read it, and I would suggest checking it out if you're interested. For all the morose imagery or unsavory details, it's structured very well, efficiently personalizes characters, as well as drawing you into the environment of Crown Point. And the art is really good. But I can't help but think it left out some important details, so I feel it is, to some degree, a bit unresolved. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.